Good morning and greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. This is the Daily Medicine Transmission for April 12th, 2022. It's Tuesday here on planet Earth at this time, and welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to check out Catalyst Energies and this daily transmission. Welcome to Tuesday. The moon is moving into Virgo today, and I, for one, am feeling a deep sense of relief. It was a pretty intense weekend, Leo moon weekend. We had the first quarter moon squaring the sun on Saturday, and just a lot of release. It just felt like over the last 2 to 3 days, like the demons just getting shook loose, and very powerfully, right? There was such a huge surprise geomagnetic storm that we had no choice really but to allow the bombardment to, speed everything up and, like I said, shake some things loose. So for some people, it's been emotional releases, very cathartic in that way. Other people have massive heart openings in certain situations, or just a increase in combust energy that maybe needed to be felt as a shaking out of the demons, and just to bring some awareness to like whatever is still kind of residually hanging about, or if there's anger that really needs expression rather than repression, that could have come up as well. And now with the moon moving into Virgo today, boy, we are now getting into the soil, right? Down into the underground of who we are, and into the actual earth, the resources, the value, the worth. The very first time that I participated in a Nipi ceremony, a sweat lodge, it was through a Lakota tradition, and it was not just very intense for me as doing this the first time, but also for this group of women who were doing it on a regular basis, these elders, right? And I was just this little, 20-year-old that, showed up on the bus to somebody's house to do this ceremony. And it turned out to be really, really intense for them as well. And there's a whole story around that. But I do remember at one point being so in the moment, so scared for my life, that I just prostrated myself right onto the earth, the bare earth, right? And had the first real memory of a direct personal connection with the planet as a living being, and being held and cooled by taking that position. And it's not a position of surrender in the way that there was something more powerful about her, but to give myself over to what she could provide in terms of holding me. And I made it through, right? And not everybody did. And many people who were clearly, as green as I was, were having to exit very soon after we started even the first round. It was really, really intense. There were some prayers that were being brought. There was an energy that was being brought forward, and it's the same basic situation that I'm feeling now, that it just needs to be brought out and purified through the process of the intense solar energy or heat, right, in the case of a sweat lodge. So I really did feel that for myself. And again, people were experiencing in a lot of ways, but now it's the moon in Virgo, right, where we can get down into the actual soil, into the cooling and receptive and just very nourishing space, and allow ourselves to utilize those resources, put them where they need to go, to use them, right? And not in a selfish way, to realize our connection between the output and then the space in which to allow that to happen. And that's the soil for Virgo, right? That is the realm of the environment itself being utilized by our mind. This is why Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So analysis, putting things where they belong. And with the moon, it'll be certainly very much in that inner space that we can find a cooling or a holding, and a way to utilize that resource in a way that perfects the form, right? Because that's ultimately one of the I would say one of the main benefits of these intense purification processes is that you are literally purifying toxins down to, the base cellular level at a very rapid rate. And so it is perfecting the form, and it perfects the spiritual form through these practices. So you may find yourself being drawn into things like this for self-care and a sense of purification with the moon in Virgo. And I'd say go for it. So the solar weather has really calmed down for the moment. There's definitely going to be more, as per usual, and this is just part of solar maximum. And we got some heavy hitters today in terms of transits, and we're going to do some retrospective astrology in this particular daily, because we have Jupiter conjunct today with Neptune, and we're going to look at the last time they were conjunct in Pisces and what was going on there. And that took me into a whole world of information that I think is going to be a great catalyst in itself, right? To kind of think about these transit historically and archetypally, and what is put into action when we make decisions that are very cyclical in nature. And we're going to see that cycle in a lot of ways coming back around to right now with this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. So this is I just want to show you what's going on, right? That here's the solar wind speed, that it's kind of tapered and is steady. There's a little bit of a blip. You can see that there was a little bit of a blip. But for the most part, it's pretty quiet. And even the KP, as you can see, has consistently been getting more settled. The Schumann, it's smaller, consistent variations, but much smaller. And for the most part, things are pretty calm right now. But there was a filament that, exploded yesterday, and there was, there's coronal hole streams and solar wind coming from there. So it's just a matter of time, honestly, before our sun charges back up again. So you take these as opportunities to do what that sweat lodge does, which is purify you through the intensity of heat and light, right? Because those things are very much connected. So, excuse me. Let's look at the chart, because this is what I really want to talk to you about today. So, as I had said, this is actually a chart for March 17th, 1856. This is the last time that Jupiter and Neptune came into conjunction in Pisces. So Jupiter has a revolution around our sun every 12 years. And so it's going to meet Neptune every 12 years somewhere, right? Wherever Neptune is. But Neptune has about a 184-year orbit. And so it's when they meet in certain signs even, they're much larger gaps. So March 17th, 1856, this is where Jupiter and Neptune were conjunct in Pisces. And as you can see, they were conjunct at 18 degrees, 13 minutes. So rounding up to 19 degrees Pisces. So we're going to talk about that too. Because that degree, the Sabian symbol for it, and what's the progression to the next degree, right? Because they're conjunct today at 23 degrees, 59 minutes, right? Before they move into the 24 to 25 degree range, which is like massive purification at a spiritual level. So, but this is 1856. So what was going on around there? Well, there's lots of things that were happening. So you're looking at pre-Civil War, you're looking at and when we look at what happened on this day in the United States, it'll give you even more context about what was going on. Definitely leading up to the Civil War, the Carrington event, right? The big solar flare that took out all the telegraph lines, and even when they were turned off and not plugged in, it still blew them all. That was 1859. There is a huge body of work. I wouldn't say huge compared to everything, but I think a sizable body of work and researchers that are very much interested in a possible reset that's already happened in this time, and the Civil War being, of course, a deep state creation, right, in order to do their normal ass shit. And this is what is very interesting about this conjunction, and now they're coming together. It's like a spiral, right? So you're coming back around to similar themes, but in a different part of time and space. And you can see that Pluto here is actually in Taurus during this time. Well, Pluto at this date, 3 degrees, 20 minutes, I mean, this is where Mercury is right now. right now, and the moon's coming into Virgo. So there's these overlaps that I found. Uranus is actually in Taurus as well during this time, 17 degrees, 58 minutes. It's actually in a sextile to this conjunction. So I want to take a minute to look at that, and I want to share with you something. It was seriously like a 3-minute search. What happened on March 17th, 1856? Well, I'm going to show one of the first things that came up that is very interesting, and show you how this conjunction now is not necessarily an extension, but the cycle coming back around to find a sense of centralization, which is really the degree of today's conjunction represents. So, and centralization of purpose does not necessarily mean that it's going to it doesn't mean it's going to succeed, or it doesn't mean that you know what the outcome truly is at the most spiritual level, especially based on your intentions. Boy, you remember the Starseed ministry from yesterday? I want you to keep that reading in your brain space while I'm reading this article, and you can read along with me because I'm going to just pop up this post. So on March 17th, 1856, laws were enacted to thwart freedom seekers on ships. So I'm going to just read it. But the idea here is that on this day, lobbyists from slaveholders and human traffickers lobbying from slaveholders and human traffickers by making it harder for enslaved African Americans to escape on ships, and by increasing penalties for anyone helping them. So on this day, the Virginia General Assembly responded to lobbying, and it seems like they drafted and passed legislation they responded to this lobbying by drafting legislation on this day. So Virginia's legislation on March 17th, 1856 came after years of complaints from enslavers and pro-slavery politicians, newspaper editors, and other complicit oppressors moaning about the loss of valuable property and getting away. So there's a couple things. This is from... It'll be linked in the description box, but in case you want to know now, it's called zindproject.org. It looks like Howard Zinn inspired type of, Civil War era website. So you can search that. I'll have it linked in the description box below if you want to read the whole thing. So this is what happened on the day that, again, Jupiter and Neptune came into a conjunction in Pisces. The last time they were in a conjunction in Pisces, because once Neptune moved out of Pisces, it was another 180 some years till it came back, just like it did a number of years ago. So here's this coming back around, right? And Neptune represents the ocean. Neptune represents Pisces, right? And this is part of our collective karma. So this degree that they were originally conjunct at 19 degrees of Pisces is a master instructing his disciple, right? Now, what's a great lobbyist? Well, Jupiter is a great lobbyist, right? Jupiter is an incredible lawyer. Jupiter is an advocate, right? It's a representative. It is the umbrella or the dome of heaven that overarches and of belief systems, right? The representative. This is why the lawyer is so connected to Jupiter in the 9th house, because it's an advocate for the spirit of the law. The idea that we all, depending on what that belief system is, Jupiter is the representative of that. So it's either a lawyer, or it's the Pope, or it's an advocate or a lobbyist of some kind. And meeting Neptune in Pisces, I mean, it is absolutely, they made a decision. They made a decision somebody allowed for that decision to be made in some way. Somebody was inspired by some sort of, feeling, some sort of transcendent goal, perhaps. And I'm not advocating for what that is at all. In fact, I am going to leave you also in the description box below a link to a short video of Jordan Maxwell talking about maritime law. This is really important because Pisces is the ocean. Neptune is Poseidon, controls the waters, and Jupiter stepping in and being this advocate, being this spiritual vision. Well, their vision was to maintain control over not only their slaves and their property, but over the oceans. Because once those people left the land and were they were no longer subject to the law of the land. They were subject to maritime law, and that's their territory, isn't it? So listen to the Jordan Maxwell thing. It'll make a lot of sense why this seems like, wow, isn't this supposed to be a really beautiful humanitarian, expansive type of spiritual experience with this conjunction? Absolutely. But who is it that represents the unity that you align yourself with, your own spiritual nature? And I would also argue too that this is something that this was truly an investiture, and it's coming to collect now, right? And with Pluto here and Mercury at the same degree right now, Mercury is able to access the realm of Pluto. No other entity, no other archetype is able to do so, right? And so what is this? The pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, 4 degrees of Taurus. Pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, the linking, right? With Pluto here, I mean, there was a link, all right, but there also was a link that was destroyed when this was initiated, I feel like. And because the link is the rainbow. It's the covenant between God and Noah, right? It is the bridge between our spiritual higher self and our material self that is often considered more like a covenant or a contract with God directly, right? Well, I feel like Pluto, there was some breaking of that, or an establishment of a link to that pot of gold through power, right? And a extraction of power, and not a highest good type of power, right? Uranus was also, like I said, is also in Taurus during this time. Different degree than now, but is in 18 degrees of Taurus, which is, I think what it is you're a woman airing out an old bag. Yes, a woman airing an old bag through the open window of her room. It's the cleansing of the ego consciousness, purification. And that's in a sextile to this conjunction. And so again, there is a process that was put into place that just because it is a horrible process and is something that we cannot really identify with, I'm sure, of lobbying to keep our power and our control. They did, but it set a whole bunch of stuff in motion at this time that we are now returning back to in a number of ways. So the retrospective historical astrology, I think, is really useful, finding patterns, which is what this is all about, is just patterns in the cosmos, patterns in time. So let's look at the chart for today, because not only let's do this. Not only is this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction coming back around to Pisces in similar time frames, right? There was the Civil War. There was trafficking. That was, there was two sides of the story of wanting to control and own people and control the water. Watch the water. Oh my. That seems relevant too. And lots of things, right? This is just a daily here, so I'm not going to get into all of the specifics because I'm going to go down, my own research pathway about this. I just want to give you some things that I just discovered as we talk about today's astrology. So, no, we want to go to this. Oh my God, it's 2022. Wow. Okay. I think I have our chart up for today now. Yes, we do. So here's the 12th of April. Now, here we are, Jupiter and Neptune conjunct in Pisces, right? There are things that are different. Well, Mercury is in the place of Pluto in Taurus at the moment. So the capacity to, not only find that link within our own cognition through our own communication, expression, just through our mental faculties with Mercury, but the capacity to also be able to connect into the realm of Pluto at that time, the last time this conjunction happened, I think is really useful and can be very insightful. I want to read the Sabian symbol of 23 to 24 degrees of Pisces. And I've been talking about it a lot because Neptune's been here for a while. And this conjunction has been building for certainly a number of days, if not a number of weeks, when Jupiter came into within 3 degrees of Neptune. So I've been talking about this because this is about our dharma and our centralized purpose, and being realistic about who we are and what we're here to do, and being surrounded by, on a small island surrounded by the vast expanse of the sea, people are seen living in close interaction. The need to consciously accept one's own personal limitations in order to concentrate one's energies and to live a centered and fulfilled life. Now that sounds amazing for Jupiter and Neptune to come together when you are when you want to concentrate your own energies, when you willfully are the hanged man and you accept your own personal limitations to successfully live in close interaction in the situation you find yourself in, right? And in time, the ego boundaries can expand, but also can become a zone of intense interchange. Imagine, Gilligan's Island here. So it's like the ego fulfills a purpose, a function, and because it sets boundaries, right? Establishes our character, and gives character to our consciousness. That's what our ego does as a element of our psyche. And so within those boundaries, there is a complex interplay going on. And the boundaries can expand, right? They can become the zone in which we interact with the world around us, right? There's a centralization that is part of this particular degree. And so how does this relate to what was going on during the Civil War period, when they came into a degree that had way more to do with the investiture of the spiritual teachings, right? The master instructing the disciple is this unbroken chain, and now it's time to fully engage with what had been put into place at that time. And there's a sense of you are with those in which you are meant to be working on these things with, right? On your small island surrounded by the vast expanse of the sea, living in close interaction. So it's going to be different for everybody, of course. And keep in mind that this position has still a very strong connection to our nodal axis, which is still in the zone of the Pleiades and opposite the Pleiades. In fact, a trine to the south node. So the first thing we all need to do is just be truly ourselves. And so as we are ourselves addressing and desperately in some ways trying to reconcile so much of other people's behavior and actions, even if we are in close interaction with them. We all have a purpose and we all have a role to play, and our karma is to fulfill that. Now, how that is going to unfold from the last time these two were together has a lot to do with what was happening then, and this attempt to basically maintain control of the waters, physically and literally, and that always translates to energetically and spiritually, because that's where it starts. And so there was a experience in that way too, where the people who are lobbying for keeping control and the traffickers and the people who made money off of enslaving other people made their decisions, right? And it's playing out now, and in fact it has to play out to its fullness in order for us to be able to come into something new. And this is very difficult to, I think, wrap our heads around, because that also means that entire cycle has to be played out, if that makes sense. So we also have another big hitter today, before we even get into the moon transits, is Saturn in Aquarius. Geez, has finally moved out of that degree. That was brutal, right? It was just like a force field, a wall that was like, no, this is how you are training to handle what is going on in society as a whole, right? now has moved into a degree of Aquarius that gives a release point for that, which is more to do with overcoming the passions of the Leo energy and being able to teach from a place of wisdom through our experiences, right? So this is the typical Aquarian, like being detached in some ways from the experience of being there, and being able to somehow communicate it socially or energetically even, because we are talking about the bandwidth of the human consciousness with Aquarius. So Saturn is going to be in a sextile to the sun in Aries. And I think that we're in a position right now that we can really get we can really have a strong impact on those around us, and be able to share our past experiences and impart wisdom, even just by being present, as Saturn. It doesn't have to do anything other than just be the structure and the fortress itself. And I think if our own consciousness, right, with the sun, our identity, our expression outwardly, right, if we can allow in an influx of energy, which we've been doing, right, with the solar energy, and now in this particular position of Aries, I think if we can allow our own consciousness to be kind of a little translucent right now, and allow ourselves to be influenced by new information or spiritual influence, right? I know for me personally, I've been kind of in a mood the last couple of days. I was like, where are you? Like, and it's really not them. It's more of where I'm at. And so being able to find this translucence and this fluidity in our own inner realm, I think is going to allow us to be inspired, and also to be able to share those experiences in I feel like that there is a lot here that can get done with the sun sextile Saturn like this, and really give us a lot of confidence and a sense of authority about ourselves, and it allows our own sense of identity and our subjective experience. We're talking about Aries. Our ego consciousness, kind of reborn with the sun in Aries, is able to actually be influenced and inspired more, because there is Saturn that's just kind of holding it down and saying, yes, time, we've been through this before, right? There is a cycle to things, and you've been through the passions, right? These last degrees of Leo in the moon in Leo are the Atlantean degrees, and Leo rules the sun, right? We're talking about atomic energy, solar energy, power that is potentially, completely sustaining or destructive, as we are experiencing with our sun and the solar weather, and how a magnetic field, which is the feminine, is necessary to actually take in this solar energy without having it strip away all of our organic existence, right? This is why it's very difficult for a surface water even to develop without very specific types of stars, and the types and the distance they are from planets, potential planets. Anyway, that's a whole different thing. But the point is that we've been through this before, right? We have been. And Saturn is just kind of, yes, it's been this wall, but now we've kind of had the opportunity to scale it or see it as a challenge and overcome it, especially when Mars and Saturn came together. So now we can stand in our own confidence and authority of not going through the experience again, but being able to share it and impart something very valuable to others around us. So, I think it does require a bit of being able to be, to just find that space in which we can be influenced. Like I said, that there's a little bit of translucence to our own consciousness, and it kind of like a breeze blowing in and blowing the curtains, right? Think about your consciousness as being able to be like that, just blowing in the wind just a little bit. And then the sun comes and meets Eris right after that, right? The goddess of chaos. So just know that that's part of it too, is the ability to be in two places at once. And the chaos is what initiates that. And identifying with and finding some sustainment of ourselves through that experience is going to be very interesting. This is going to be later today. So while this is all happening, the moon is moving past the last degrees of Leo and is going to go through her transit of Virgo, and not before she is opposite, let's see here, opposite Mars. Let's go ahead an hour or so. This is this morning. So in terms of the moon transits, we're going to start first thing this morning here and look at this opposition, the moon's opposition to Mars. Again, we're prepared, right? We're prepared. Hopefully, many of us have acted on the need to be prepared, even though the moon in Leo over here is way more interested in our own, it's overwhelming, right? There's a lot of energy that I feel like internally we all are holding, and memory and experiences that we've already been through. And if you remember, the first real transit of the moon in Leo during the last 2 days was this trine to Chiron, right? Talking about, hey, this is going to balance the fire that could easily be sparked by the Chiron triggers, which was to recollect these past situations as if they were memory, right? Not getting caught back in the feeling of them. So there has been a lot of anger coming out, especially with all this Aries energy. So anger that can be channeled into something much, to not be held, right? It's important to recognize anger, feel what it feels like, recognize where it's coming from, and it needs a release point. And even that can be very intense. But this opposition with Mars is like, we have, you've worked on being able to have some intelligent foresight of what this may feel like as a result of everybody coming to this, point of saturation in some ways. So even though this opposition here is naturally a tension, it's the tension that with a Mars pulling back, it's like, we worked on this. Remember, we scaled that wall of Saturn, and now we have something to show for it, not only in our intelligent foresight, we can act on it, but Saturn now is just like, okay, now is a very kind of like very wise elder right now in this degree of Aquarius. So right after this happens, the moon comes into a quincunx with Pluto, and again, the yearning to come into form, to be ready to come into rebirth. A quincunx is just an adjustment, right? It's just an adjustment. And so being able to identify and feel into this experience of rebirth in some way, and the potential for it when we get to these last degrees of Leo, right? And what's happening every time, the sun is constantly being reborn because of its main sequence, right? There is nuclear fusion happening over and over and over and over again, right? And it keeps releasing and releasing and releasing. And so it's something unconscious that is coming up to the surface to be released. And the adjustment truly is to find a way to transmute that energy for ourselves in the face of Pluto and Capricorn, right? That is unearthing everything, destroying everything, that is material and institutional. So it's the space that ultimately will allow for a collective rebirth, which is going to be a lot more after 2024, I suspect, with Pluto coming to Aquarius. So the moon then moves into Virgo and trine Mercury in Taurus, right? And this is such a wonderful opportunity to start feeling the blending of our own duality and to find some happiness there, to enjoy the process, maybe to just feel kind of like a playfulness about it, bringing these two aspects within us to blend within us, and again, Mercury, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? The covenant. And I suspect that it is, this will increase our sensitivity to that linkage if we're having some sort of like, brain fog or a sense of blockage in some way. Maybe finding that space where the duality is able to, the solar energy and the magnetic energy within us are able to find a happy medium to play and to, enjoy it. And I think that will really help. That will really help open up any blockages that we may be feeling or worried about in terms of, how do I establish or maintain my connection to God or my higher self? And I think, people they are worried about this. And it's something that we engage with every day if we're on a conscious spiritual journey through this lifetime. And then that's really it, right? And so that will be later this afternoon in terms of moon transits. And then we're going to find that the sun does the sextile with Saturn, what we talked about, and then comes and meets Eris, right? The goddess of discord and chaos. And it's the possibility of existing in two places at once. And without the chaos, we don't have this is where our opportunity lies in order to find the space in between to exist both in third and fifth, even if it's just in our imagination or intention and visualization, right? Like being able to visualize what would it feel like to be a 5D person? Sometimes there are situations that can happen that you'll be like, oh, that was, maybe that there's the 5D version of you and you've met that person, or you've just had experiences in your own life that you have a moment of like, that's what that is. And you look at it from all different angles. So, the possibility to gain experience at two levels of being, the sun conjunct Eris. So just keep in mind what Eris does. She rolls the golden apple into the party and causes chaos, right? But it's their own fault because she totally exploited all of their vanity or all of their ego, right? And so, just keep that in mind too, because the sun really is a big part of our ego consciousness. And it's a reborn ego consciousness, which is even more dangerous than an Aries ego consciousness. If you're just in like self-preservation mode, or you're like Mars the warrior that's just acting out, that's one thing. It's Leo, where true narcissism really takes root. And I feel my own personal opinion based on my knowledge and study in psychology, and then this is like, it's really, it can start from the very beginning, but I feel like dysfunction in the fourth house is a big part of how the fifth house can turn from, spiritual devotion to fanaticism and a cult leader, basically. So that is the downside of Leo as well. And when you're angry or you feel righteous and you have strong Leo happening, it is very easy to act out of a passion. So it's important that we have an outlet if we're feeling angry, and especially if we're feeling triggered. So, but also to keep in mind that this sense of the sun is our ego consciousness reborn, right? And meeting Eris could very well be really a big ego challenge because of the chaos that she initiates. But as long as you understand that and realize the potential in this situation, I think we'll be okay. And there's a lot of other strong stuff that's happening today. So that was, I think I'm going to leave it there, my friends. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are interested in a reading or energy work to support your process, if you're interested in learning about the Starseed ministry and joining the Starseed Fellowship, you can find links to all that stuff in the description box below. I'll link the article to the 1856 Virginia General Assembly legislation that basically made it a crime to help anybody escape by boat. So, and also the Jordan Maxwell video for maritime law, just to give you an idea of why it's important. So many of you have, I'm sure, have heard about that and why that's important. So I think that this Jupiter and Neptune conjunction coming back around right now, and the other overlaps is very telling about what we're truly here to do. And what needs to play out. And if you remember the reading from yesterday. I can't stress that enough. And if you haven't seen the Starseed Ministry from yesterday, I would recommend it, because the reading in particular will fit into this, I think, this perspective that I'm offering really well. At least it's doing that for me. So I love you guys. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. I'll see you tomorrow for the daily. Bye.